Rudy Giuliani is doing his media tour talking about the investigation of Special Counsel Robert Mueller into possible Russian collusion. And during a conversation with Chris Cuomo on CNN, he was asked about whether or not Donald Trump should be forced to testify if he is given a subpoena. And of course, Giuliani has a different idea in regard to the treatment for Trump versus the treatment of other previous presidents. So without further ado, let's take a look at the first video.
I never heard of a subpoena for the president's person.
Well, you said exactly that.
No.
And you went on to say,
Chris, let's distinguish between a subpoena for documents, subpoena that takes the president out of the Oval Office and puts him in front of a grand jury or hearing. Can't do it. Can't do it the second. You can do the first.
Well, you never did that distinction before.
Well, it never occurred to me they would try to subpoena the president.
That's exactly what was going on in 1998. But people are going to say I'm making this up.
They lifted.
Here's Charlie Rose with you in the interview, and then you tell me what you meant.
Oh, come on.
What, you don't want to hear it?
Not even relevant.
If the president is asked to testify, subpoenaed
That's
to
really
testify
unfair.
before
What you're
a grand
doing right
jury.
now is extremely unfair.
I'm giving you a chance to
people don't come
explain
on the
it.
show.
Oh, stop.
Not going to do it.
With all that promoting of Avenatti, ambulance.
What happens if Robert Mueller
What does that have to
subpoenas
do with
the
this?
president?
Because they're all trying to bring Trump into that, and he's not involved in it, Chris.
Okay, so that's another great interview by Chris Cuomo. And look, I've criticized him, I've praised him in the past for the different things that he's done. It was a great interview he did of Netanyahu the other day, unlike anything I've seen on American television, and that was wonderful. The only thing is they should have kept Giuliani's mic shut, okay? Because he wound up filibustering and talking over the part where Giuliani says in that interview about President Clinton, of course they should subpoena him. And so it is a direct, and it was not about his documents, it was about his person, as Giuliani called it in the earlier part of the interview. Yeah. So it was direct, 100% hypocrisy. That is not they say, oh, well, that's a gotcha question. Well, that's because we got you on your hypocrisy. So that is what a job of a journalist is. What is your actual opinion? Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? And I have to challenge you. So what are you not supposed to do? Chris Cuomo is supposed to know that Giuliani said the exact opposite earlier, but not mention it, what, to appease power?
No,
that's not how journalism works.
I also want to emphasize a statement that Giuliani made in that interview. He said, this is the reason people don't want to come on your show, which I think is important because it brings up that issue of access and how the powerful will refuse to go on programs or news or go to news organizations that are going to ask the tough questions. They just want softballs. That's all they want. And if you're going to ask him a tough question, he's not going to appear. This is the reason why people don't come on your show.
Well, I think that Rudy Giuliani doesn't want to be called a liar because in essence, that's what Chris Cuomo made him, right? A liar, because he doesn't really feel that way. And he was caught in so many other things during that 45-minute interview. It was insane.
Yeah, and by the way, Cuomo or anyone else did not make Giuliani a liar. Giuliani made himself a liar. So there was a very easy way to avoid that. Hey, Chris, you know what? Back in 1998, I did say that the president should testify and should be subpoenaed. You're right. Then that's it. You're not a liar.
And hence wrong back then.
Or I was wrong. Or I thought the president there lied under oath. I think that's different. That's such a serious crime that I warranted. I mean, nobody believed him, but it's an answer, and then move on, right? And I think, I don't know, Carol, you know better, but if Rudy Giuliani never comes on CNN again, I suspect the network will continue to thrive.
We'll be just
somehow
fine.
find its way.
We hope he does, though, because when you talk to Rudy Giuliani off air, he's a great guy. I mean, so he's been nice to me, right?
Right, sure.
So I hope he does come back on CNN because I think it's valuable for the viewers. They need to see him on every network he can be on, frankly.
Yeah.
Because he's the president's lawyer.
And yeah, no, and whether it's Fox News or anywhere else he went on, you do get a sense of what their stance is, and it doesn't look pretty to the rest of us, but they believe it, and and their job is to go disseminate that. But if you say, hey, I'm only going on Fox News because they'll give me softballs. By the way, Giuliani also butchered that. I mean, had to give him softball after softball, and he couldn't hit him. He made a mess of it, right? But then they'll only have Fox News. So if the ground rules are, I get to ask you legitimate questions as a reporter, then of course I have Giuliani all over TV. That'll be great. And that's what Cuomo did there.
The fact is Mr. Trump has what, 40% support, right?
About.
So that leaves 60% of the rest of the people who are probably watching other networks besides Fox News. And Rudy Giuliani and Mr. Trump have to appeal to those people too. Mm-hmm. So it would behoove them to appear on CNN and MSNBC. And
I don't
the
think
Young Turks.
Yeah, but they don't. Yeah, that would be good. But they don't care about that. They are governing to the 40, and it's been pretty effective actually. And the only real threat that he has, because we're not going to, the likelihood of indicting a sitting president is a stretch and would take something that we have not certainly seen yet. The ramifications, as the founders intended, the ramifications of the kind of behavior that Trump is engaged in or anything similar are political. And those ramifications, if you're maintaining a solid 40%, are unlikely to come to fruition.
Well, something else that Giuliani said during that interview, there's this notion that Mr. Trump is alleging that during Obama's administration that the FBI planted a spy in his presidential campaign. Mm-hmm. And of course, that was James Comey, right? And he tweeted that twice this morning.
Yeah.
So Chris Cuomo asked Rudy Giuliani, was that true? Do you have any evidence? And Rudy Giuliani admitted that he'd read reports about it, but he didn't necessarily know if it was true.
Yeah.
That was really disturbing to me because if you don't know it's true, why are you saying it on national television?
Right. Yeah.
And it's just to throw doubt into people's minds about the Mueller
It was intentional.
investigation.
Absolutely. That is their tactic.
I read this. I
strategy.
said this poll to Cenk. You mentioned it. I saw it. I wish I had it in front of me. But a year of attempting to discredit Mueller and Comey, Republicans their entire lives, most of their investigators Republicans. But they're mostly what they are professional federal investigators. That's what they've been. But more than 50% of the country, I think the number was 53, is that right, Cenk?
It was 61% of Republicans.
61%. I think overall the number was above 50 of Americans who believed that the Mueller investigation was political. Mm-hmm. And that's a victory. That's what that is. That's just right. So little doubt, so little doubt, so little doubt.
Yeah, and so there's been a lot of focus groups and a lot of studies. MSNBC did one recently, and they said, these are Trump voters. They said that the Mueller investigation was just created by the deep state. They won't. These are all talking points they heard from Giuliani, Trump over and over again. They won't investigate the Democrats. That's not true. They did. They won't investigate Hillary Clinton. They did it publicly in the middle of the election, and it might have cost her the election. And in fact, the New York Times reported that the FBI was concerned that even though they were investigating both candidates, that they could not say anything about the Trump investigation. And part of the reason why they wanted an informant rather than publicly going and talking to any of the Trump officials is because they didn't want it known that they were investigating Trump. But twice they declared, we are investigating Hillary Clinton. So nonetheless, these guys say, no, they're deeply partisan in favor of the Democrats, which makes no logical sense. And other words used to describe Mueller by the Republicans in that study were desperate, unethical, partisan, liar. Robert Mueller is a Republican, a lifelong Republican. So if he is a partisan, he's a partisan, believe it or not, on your side, Republicans. But they won't see straight because they do that propaganda. And if you dare challenge their propaganda, even for a minute, as Chris Cuomo did there, whoa, unfair! That's why we won't go on your show.
Fake
How dare
news.
you show the truth?
They do the fake news thing.
And who else, by the way, participated in keeping the investigation of Trump quiet for fear of tipping the scales unfavorably toward Hillary Clinton during the election? The President of the United States, Barack Obama, who kept quiet about that investigation. All of them believing in the back of their minds, or not even so much and to some extent in the front of their minds, that she was going to win anyway. And they would undermine the process if they made that public.
Yeah, how'd that work out? 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.